yoga teacher and personal trainer, and I'm here today to teach you a gentle yoga practice. So some of the props that you might want to gather before we get started: a blanket if you have one, a yoga strap, or maybe a tie or a robe strap from home, a couple of yoga blocks if you have them. Some people can use books if they need something to elevate the floor in poses where they have tighter hamstrings and aren't able to touch the floor, and a bolster or a pillow. And so before we get started, let's find a comfortable seated position on the floor. You can also sit in a chair if you prefer, if it's not comfortable for you to sit on the floor. Some people like to sit on a folded blanket. They find that that gives them enough height at the pelvis to where the thigh bones are below the tops of the hip points here. But you might find that as you sit on the blanket, that your knees are still high up. That causes a lot of tension in the hip flexors and really rounds the low back and feels quite miserable for some. So if you can create a bit more height, grabbing a bolster, wedging that underneath your sit bones, and you might notice I'm sitting to the front here of the bolster, which allows the pelvis to tilt into an anterior tilt and gives you a nice neutral curve in your low back. So once you find the height that feels right for you, you might find that bringing your legs in at a closer cross feels better, or at the ankles. And it's certainly okay if you need to straighten one of your legs or both. So in today's practice, the theme is on how to be gentle with yourself. And so often we push and strive and effort to try to be the best version of ourselves that we can be, and sometimes to a detriment. And so I think that it's nice to find a practice with which we can show up and put forth effort, but also find a sense of ease or pulling back just a little bit so that you have that balance between effort and ease. So that's our theme for the day, for the practice. And I'll invite you now to take your hands together at your heart center in Anjali Mudra. And you can close down your eyes. And settling into your two sit bones, the right sit bone, the left sit bone. You might move back and forth a couple of times to feel that. Feel that the spine is naturally long and tall without feeling forced or rigid. The head balancing above the heart. And begin to notice now that your breath is ebbing and flowing. And in yoga, we generally breathe in and out of the nostrils. So receiving the breath through the nose, filling up the lung spaces gently, and allowing the air to exit out of the nose. And you might really focus on these next few breaths on allowing the inhalations to become a little longer. And with the exhalation, allowing the air to completely exit the lungs. And we'll take one more breath like that. through the nostrils. Complete exhalation out of the nostrils. And giving a soft bow of your chin in towards your heart space. Feeling the intention of your practice for today. Balancing effort and ease. And then when you're ready, you can release your hands down to your thighs. Allow your eyes to come to an open. And so we're going to set up for the next posture. We'll be on our backs. So you can come off of the cushion that you were sitting on and just go ahead and set that so that it's out of the way, maybe towards the end of your mat. And you can have a folded blanket at the head of the mat. Make sure that you have your strap within hand's reach. And we'll go ahead and come onto our back here in constructive rest pose. So lowering yourself down onto your elbows and then onto your back. Making any adjustments with the blanket under your head so your neck and head is fully supported. Find that your knees are bent, your feet are on the floor about hip bone distance apart. It's okay if they're slightly wider. And one of the things I want you to notice is the weight heavier in the heels or is the weight heavier in the toes, or can you find that the weight is equally rooted through the heels, the ball mounds, and the toes? So you might experiment with moving your feet closer to your sit bones or further away until you can experience that even quality of pressure through the heels, ball mounds, and toes. The knees pointing straight up here, and the hands resting on the abdomen. You can close your eyes now and begin to tune into your breathing. And at this time, no need to force the breath or contrive the breath. Allowing it to be natural and rhythmic. You might notice that when you inhale, your belly rises, your ribs expand. You may notice that when you exhale, that the belly lowers towards the floor and there's a contraction in the rib cage. So as best you can, keeping your breath in that rhythmic manner. And we're going to start to do some pelvic rocking. So paying particular attention to the back of your sacrum. So the sacrum is that triangular shaped bone at the back of the pelvis. I'll just show you here real quick. So your lumbar vertebra rests just right on top of the sacrum. SI joints are out to the side, and then it makes a triangular shape here down to the tailbone. So at the top of the sacrum, here's where I want you to notice as you rock your pelvis in such a way that your low back almost imprints into the mat. You might feel some tone at the belly and the pelvic floor. And then from there, I'd like for you to rock on your pelvis or your sacrum in such a way that you create a little tunnel in the small of your back and you're moving towards the tailbone. You might not be able to feel the actual tailbone there on the floor. And so here, let's just take a deep breath with that tunnel that we've created. And on the exhalation, I'm going to roll back onto the top of the sacrum again. And we'll do that a few more times. Inhaling, Create that little tunnel. Exhaling, rocking to the top of the sacrum. Twice more. Once you finish this exhalation, I'd like for you to explore if you can rest at the very center of your sacrum. So not at the top of the sacrum, not at the tailbone, which creates quite a bit of an arch in the low back, but somewhere in between those 2 points. And that's going to be about neutral. Neutral pelvis, neutral lumbar spine. And so we'll endeavor to try to keep that through the next few yoga stretches. So from here, we'll bring the right knee in towards the right side of the chest, mainly towards the armpit rather than the sternum. And you can either grab the back of your right thigh, your knee, or your shin. If you can't quite reach the shin, or if you have knee pain, grab the back of the thigh. That'll keep the knee from being compressed. Notice how if you pull the thigh too far in here, it flattens your lumbar curve. So from there, just finding that you're right at the center of the sacrum, pause there, and then straightening the left leg so that your left thigh is heavy to the floor. And you might even, I'll move these blocks so you can see, you might even lift your toes up towards the ceiling on that left leg. So just pausing here, seeing if you can start to settle, feeling the weight of your bones settling towards the floor. This gives a nice gentle stretch at your upper hamstrings towards the sit bones, the gluteals. And then from here, we're going to grab our yoga belts, yoga strap, and place the strap, you might have to lift your head and shoulders, around the ball mound right there of your foot. And once you have that, work towards a straight leg. It doesn't have to be completely vertical. And for some of you, your leg might be more at this angle. But seeing if you can start to straighten the knee without locking the knee joint. Okay. And then concentrate next on finding that neutral pelvis that we talked about. And once you've found that, you can take both tails of the strap into individual hand here. And with the elbows straight, begin to bring the heads of your upper arm bones towards the floor so that your chest broadens. Notice if you pull the leg in, that increases the stretch, and we're trying to avoid an intense stretch. So we want the stretch to feel mild and moderate rather than extreme. So to come out here, you'll bend the right knee. You can take the strap off of your foot. Come back into constructive rest pose. And then maintaining neutral lumbar curve, balancing at the center of your sacrum on the mat. We'll bring the left thigh in towards the body here. Grab the back of your thigh, knee or shin. Notice if you pull in too close, you flatten your low back. So find your neutral curve. And then you may straighten your right leg. And pausing here, you might focus now on your natural breath flow. we're going to grab the strap. You might have to lift your head and shoulders to place the strap around the ball mound of the left foot. Lay the head back down and then straightening the left leg. And just finding the angle of your thigh bone with which you can feel a mild to moderate stretch and keep your neutral pelvis, neutral curve. Arms straight, shoulders releasing towards the floor, chest broad. And completing this exhalation, you'll bend the left knee, take the strap off of the foot, come back into constructive rest pose. Now I'd like for you to remove the blanket from underneath the head. You can slide it back behind you. Rest the head now so that the space right behind your eyes is centered into the earth. Take your arms outwards away from your body about 45 degrees and rotate your arms so that your thumbs are pointing up. From here, press equally through the four corners of your feet and all 10 of your toes. So like you're making an imprint into the sand, but rather your yoga mat. Start to notice how that really firms up the backs of the legs. The gaze up towards the ceiling here. And as you press through the feet and toes, I'd like for you to inhale and lift your pelvis, lift your lumbar vertebra. Continue to lift each one of your vertebra off of the mat. And then on your exhale, slowly lower your spine, one vertebra at a time, as if you were laying down a strand of pearls on a table. And we'll do that about 3 more times. So again, as you inhale, pick up your tailbone, your sacrum, your lumbar, each vertebra, until you're as high as feels like you're balancing that effort and ease. And then on your exhale, slowly and with control, lowering down. And let's do 2 more like that. And last time. Good, settling through the center of your sacrum here. Widen your feet so that they're about as wide as your outer hips. For some of you, you might find that the outer edges of your feet are in line with the outer edges of your mat. I like to turn my toes out just a little bit. Take the arms out into a T shape, palms facing up if that feels okay in the shoulders. Some people prefer to have their thumbs up or their palms down, so you can really just explore what feels best in your shoulder girdle. So here, we're going to be moving through windshield wipers. So on an inhale, you can allow your belly to expand, your ribs to expand. As you exhale, let's take the thighs over to the right. So you'll come onto the outer edge of the right foot and the inner edge of the left foot, and then roll your head to the left, as if you were looking towards your left thumb. Good. Inhale, your head comes back to center, your knees come back to center. And then exhale, knees and thighs over to the left. You'll be on the outer edge of your left foot, the inner edge of your right foot, and roll your head to the right. So let's do that with more of a rhythm here. Inhaling, head and hips back to center. Exhaling, knees and thighs to the right, head to the left. Inhaling to center. Exhaling, thighs to left, head to right. And a couple more times here at your own natural rhythm of your breath. So you're really trying to coordinate the movement of your legs and your head with the rhythm of your breath. And we each have our own rhythm, our own breathing capacity, so there's no need to try to match yours to mine. And then there's some days that we feel like moving faster, so it's really up to you. This is your practice. Okay, we'll bring our head and hips back to center now. All right, and so to come out of this, let's go ahead and roll over to the left side and push with your hands to come up into a semi-seat, just long enough to transition some props for the next couple of postures. So I like to use a blanket to pad my knees. So I'm going to grab my blanket and unfold it so that it's this big open rectangle. And you want to make sure that you have this placed more towards the center of your mat. We are going to be coming into a tabletop position. So patting the knees here, you might look back and see that your knees are below your hips, that your tops of your feet are on the mat. If you get a cramp, you can always curl your toes under. And then check to see that your hands are underneath the shoulders with your spine neutral. And if you have wrist discomfort, you can take your hands forward of the shoulders just a little bit. Don't go too far forward. It's just a few degrees. See if you can press through the four corners of your hands, particularly right underneath your index finger knuckle and your thumb. From here, we'll move into cow and cat. So as you inhale, lift your tailbone, make a little more of a curve in your low back, and then from your navel, lengthen through your chest, lift your chin. Don't lift your head too high, but just enough. And then as you exhale, start to round your low back, lengthening the tailbone down and reaching your mid and upper back towards the sky and bringing your chin in towards your chest. And so if you'd like to move here with the breath, you can inhale, tailbone lifts, chest lifts, chin lifts. Exhaling, round the back. I like to slow the movement down sometimes to really feel the articulation of the spinal column and also feel the co-contraction of your abdominals. And if one of those two positions feels better for you today, if you're really feeling like it's helpful for you to pause in either cow or cat, I'll encourage you to stay there for just another breath. And you might notice that your hands and wrists are tired now. So So what we'll do is shift the hips back just a little bit. So I know that for some of you, knee flexion is difficult to get the hips back towards the heels. And we'll come down onto the elbows and just turn the palms up. And you might just circle your wrists a few times here in each direction. Excellent. We're going to come back into tabletop to set up for what I like to call superhero pose. So from here, with our arms straight, our spine neutral, not letting the head drop or lift too high, let's take the right leg back and connect the right toes down to the floor so that the heel can gently stretch back and the crown of the head can reach forward. You might feel some tone in your low belly here. Now this might be where you stay, or if you'd like, you can start to walk your left fingertips forward. So this starts to give some imbalance here. So working with your stabilizers. This might be where you stay, or if you'd like, you can lift your right leg. Or you can work with lifting your left arm with the thumb pointing up. Remember to breathe. Sometimes when things get challenging, we hold our breath. So left hand down, right knee down. Shift the hips back to a comfortable degree on the knees. Take some of that weight out of the wrists. And then come forward again to table. Take the left leg back so the left toes connect down to the mat. Stretch back gently through the left heel. And at the same time, think of growing your spine a little longer through the crown of your head. Now this might be where you stay, or you can walk your right fingertips forward a little bit. Maybe firming the left glutes and lifting the left leg. Or you might lift the right arm in addition to that with the thumb pointing up, so it's an external rotation in the right arm. And then returning hand and knee back down. Good. Grab your yoga blocks and place one block in each hand as if you were doing a high tabletop position. So that's just going to give you some space to be able to step your right foot forward between your hands. Now some people kind of get stuck at this point, so you can use your right hand behind the calf to help to move the foot forward. If you have tight hips, I would recommend bringing your blocks up to the highest setting, and that just gives you a little bit more space here. And I'm just going to look with my eyes to see that my right knee is above the right heel, and the left knee might be set back a little bit further from the left hip. And then from here, if you would like, you can bring your hands up to your right thigh bone and press into the thigh bone to start to lift the torso more into an upright or vertical position. With the hands there into the thigh, it may give you some more stability. You might stay here, or if you'd like, you can reach your left arm forward and up. So we're not trying to lean the hips forward. This is really about finding our stability here. We're not pushing to the edge. Then take the hands back down to the blocks. And you can lower them one step so that they're more stable. Bring the right knee back into high tabletop. The left foot forward between the blocks. And if you feel like you get stuck there, you can always use that left hand to bring the foot forward. Bring your blocks up higher if you need them. Left knee over left heel. The right knee is set a little further back from the right hip. You might stay here, or take your hands up to the left thigh. Push with your hands to start to get out of that left hip flexor. And so you're more in an upright vertical position. If you'd like, you can reach your right arm forward and up. Just taking a couple of easy breaths here. Very good. Let's take the right hand back down to the block here. Left hand to the block. And our transition next will be to curl the right toes under, lift the right knee, and step the right foot forward. I like to bring the blocks forward. It just gives a little bit more space here, especially if you have really tight hamstrings. Press through the four corners of your feet, your big toe ball mound, your inner edge heel, your pinky toe ball mound, and your outer edge heel. Lengthen through your spine, from your tailbone through the crown of the head. And then to come out of this, let's take the hands to the hips. And with a neutral spine, lift the back of the head towards the ceiling, rise up. And release the hands down to your sides. So the palms are facing the midline. They're facing the outer hips here. I'll turn to face you. You can still face the front of your mat. And so with this pose, mountain pose, we're really trying to find that we're centered through the heels, the ball mounds, and the toes. Finding a micro bend to the knees. The softness at the groins, the hips, so you're not tucking the pelvis forward like you would in a bridge. Just being softer through the hip flexors. And feel a sense of lifting and lengthening through all sides of your torso in an easy way, not in a rigid way. And trying to balance your head over your heart space. You don't have to bring your head right over the spine. That can be too much tension in the throat and the neck. Good. So from here, we're going to work with some arm sweeps and then add in a little bit of balance work by lifting the heels. So we'll start first with the hands together at the heart space. As you inhale, take the arms down, make a big circle with your hands and reach up. You might even look up. And then as you exhale, sweep the arms back out. Join the hands together at the heart space. So we'll do that twice more. Inhale, sweep the arms out and up. Exhale, bring the hands to the heart. Inhale, sweep arms out and up. Exhale, hands to heart. Good, so you might continue with this, the arm movement, or as you inhale and lift your arms, lift your heels, maybe just an inch or two. As you exhale, slowly lower your arms, slowly lower your heels if you can. So as we continue to explore this movement, you might notice that if you lift your heels too high, you'll lose your balance. And you might also notice that it's hard to keep all 10 of your toes down on the floor, especially your big toes. So really working with keeping those big toes down without over gripping them. Let's do one more like that. Really good. So that's great for the health of your arches of your feet, strengthens your calves and your feet. So if you still have a blanket on your mat, go ahead and just fold that up and set it off to the side. Coming back to face the front of your mat, bring your hands to your hip, fingers forward, thumbs may wrap around the hips. Step your right foot back just about 2 feet, maybe 2.5 feet if you have longer legs. And what we're looking for here is that all 10 toes are pointing forward. So you might notice that if you're tighter in the front of the right hip, that your heel wants to turn in and your hip point on the right side wants to turn out. So see if you can internally rotate your right thigh bone to get the toes to point forward. So that action comes from the rotation of the upper thigh bone, not from the knee or the ankle. Once you've found that as best as you can, find that your torso is vertical and that you are looking out across the horizon level. You'll breathe in here. As you breathe out, bend your left knee and lift your right heel. Again, as you inhale, you're going to straighten the left leg, lower the right heel, but try not to let the heel turn in again. So still keeping the toes pointing forward. And we'll do that about 5 or 6 more times. So inhale, bend the left knee, lift the right heel. Exhale, straighten the left knee, lower the right heel. So I shout out to my teacher, Scott Anderson, who taught this to me in my 500-hour teacher training. He calls this the psoas walk. So it's a way to gently lengthen your iliopsoas at the front of the hip. Now the next time that you bend your left knee, I'd like for you to keep that left knee bent. And then we're going to work to slowly lower the right heel without straightening the left knee. And imagine that you're lengthening your right leg and heel out of your rib cage. And keep the feet really grounded now. Take the hands either to the heart center in Anjali Mudra, or you might take your arms out and up so that your arms are alongside your ears. Let's breathe here, fluid breath. Now to come out of the posture, put more weight into your left foot. Step the right foot forward. Bring the hands back to heart space. Your feet hip distance apart. And then we'll take the hands back to the hips for the second side. Step your left foot back about 2.5 to 3 feet. Rotate the left thigh bone internally so the toes are pointing forward. Eyes are at the horizon level. Breathing in here. As you breathe out, bend your right knee, lift your left heel. Good. Inhale, straighten the legs, lower the back heel. I think I got the breath mixed up. I do that a lot. So I apologize. It's exhale to bend the right knee and inhale to lower the back heel. But as long as you're breathing, that's what's important. Now the next time you bend your right knee, keep it bent. and slowly lower that left heel down to the earth, like you could lengthen your heel out of your rib cage. Ground through both feet equally. Option of hands to the heart now, or arms overhead. I'm just checking in to see, can you find that balance between your effort and that sweetness, that easefulness? Release the hands down to the heart. Step the back foot forward. Good. Okay, so from here, we're going to move our blocks so that they're facing the long edge of your mat, and you can have them about shoulder distance apart. We'll come to them at some point. We're just getting them ready. But we are going to take the feet so that they are a little bit wider than the outer hip bones, the greater trochanters, and we'll turn the heels in a little bit, and the toes will be angled out. And I actually moved from the thigh bones to get that to happen. So this is called sumo squat. It's a great way to warm up your ankles, your knees, and your hips. It also strengthens the pelvic floor and your gluteals, hamstrings, and quadriceps. So hands can be at hips if you prefer, or to the heart space. And here we're going to take a breath in and bend the knees and sit the hips back, like you're sitting back on an imaginary stool behind you. And then as you exhale, press equally through the feet to rise back up. Try not to lock your knees. Okay, inhaling, sitting the hips back. You might notice as the hips go back, the heart goes forward. Exhale up. Moving at your own pace. So the goal is not to try to get as low as is possible. This is really about finding your strength and your natural range of motion, which can be really empowering, knowing that you can move in ways that build strength and flexibility. It's all so important. So let's do one more like that. And so this is a challenge for some of you. You're going to lift your right heel. I'll be your mirror here in this case. Lift your right heel about 2 inches. Smile. And lower your heel to a count of 5. 4, 3, 2, 1. If you need to come up and then go back down, you can. Otherwise, lift your left heel about 2 inches. You might take a breath in here. And then slowly lower to a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good, go ahead and straighten your legs. Take your feet in to hip distance apart. Let your arms rest at your sides. Find your mountain pose. Equal weight through the feet. Heels, ball mounts, toes. Unlock the hips and knees. Feel the breath help to lengthen your spine and bring your awareness to now. Good. We'll take the hands to the hips and open the eyes if they were closed. Take the feet out now so that they're even wider than the sumo squat. So it just depends on your body. I would say about 3 to 3.5 feet apart. But you just want to make sure that there's no pain or strain in your ankles or your knees. So we're going to try to rotate the thighs out just a little bit, and you might notice that your toes have to turn out slightly. Take a breath in and really focus on getting long and tall from your tailbone through the crown of your head, and try to maintain that neutral spine. As you exhale, hinge from your hips. So you're going to send your hips back a little bit. As you hinge, try not to let your spine round or your head round. And then you'll find a point where your hamstrings say, that's enough, that's as far as we're going. You'll take your hands down to the blocks. And so on this first part, we're in a halfway lift, and bring your chin in towards the chest just enough to start to feel a length in the back of your neck. So we're sharing weight between the feet and the hands. So see if you can really press out through the feet to enliven the legs a bit. And you might stay in halfway lift, or you can fold forward a bit more. And as you fold forward, you might find that your blocks can go down on a lower setting. The elbows may bend. If they do bend, you might not need the blocks. You can just go down to the floor with your hands. And just let your upper back round and your head hang. So this is a really nice way to decompress the spine. It's an inversion, like downward facing dog is an inversion, where your head is below your heart. So you don't have to do headstand or handstand to get the benefit of an inversion. But you may notice that as you're upside down, that pressure increases in the face, and if that's happening to you, you may come back up into that halfway lift. To come out, let's bring the heels in, kind of pivot the heels in, then pivot the toes in, and then the heels in, and then the toes in until your feet are about hip distance apart. And bend your knees a little bit, take your hands to your hips and rise back up to standing. Back to Tadasana. Good, and now we're going to move into a warrior two pose. So we'll take the feet out about as wide as you were in the previous pose, that standing wide angle forward fold. And we're going to take the right heel out a little bit, just out at about a 10 to 15 degree angle. Set the heel back down. You might notice that your hip started to turn in. That's fine, you want that. And then pivot onto the left heel and turn the left toes out. So the toes are pointing towards the short side of your mat. Your hips will also be at an angle. Do not try to bring them in line with the long side of your mat. Let them go into their natural angle. So they're neither forward facing the short side of the mat, or they're neither facing the long side of the mat. It's kind of somewhere in between, depending upon the shape of your hip sockets. Now once you've found that, you're going to bend the left knee so that the left knee is above the heel. From there, you might notice that your tendency is to lean to the right. So see if best you can start to get a sense of being more upright and vertical in your torso. You might also notice your torso is turning to your left. So I like to take my hands to my rib cage and just encourage a rotation here to the right, just from the upper rib cage and spine, not from the hips. Once you've found that, take your arms out into a T shape. You might look at your back arm and hand to see that the palm is parallel to the earth, and then turn your head to look at your front hand. And so we'll just breathe here, a couple more breaths. And as you exhale, you can take your hands down to your hips, parallel your feet. If you need a break, you can step your feet into hip distance apart. And then widen them again. And we'll do the second side. So we'll take that left heel out, set the heel down, the hip does turn in, and pivot onto the right heel to turn the right toes out. From here, we'll bend that front knee, so the knee is right over the heel on that right leg. Good. You might notice your torso is shifted, or that it's twisted towards the right leg. So you can move the rib cage so that it's straight up and down above the pelvis rather than off to the side. and then rotate just the rib cage to the left, just a little bit. Take the arms out into a T shape. You might look at your backhand and your arms, see that it's level with the floor, not down or up. And then turn your head to look to your front hand. We'll hold here for a couple of breaths and see if you can find how the inhalation gives you a sense of space and freedom, and the exhalation helps you to really just ground down through the feet. And on your exhale, you can take your hands to your hips. We'll parallel at the feet, step the feet in again to hip distance apart. Good. So from here, let's take the blocks back up to the front end of the mat. And facing the front end of the mat, you can set these down. So we'll go into Parsvottanasana, which is sometimes called diamond pose. It's a great way to actively lengthen your hamstrings, engage your quads, and to also lengthen your calves and open up the feet. Also helps to open up the outer hips, the IT bands. So from here, let's go into forward fold. We'll breathe in to reach the arms up and breathe out to fold from the hips. Take your hands down to your blocks. And I'd recommend to take the blocks back and frame the feet. From there, you'll step your right foot back, just about 2.5 to 3 feet. And notice how I turn the right heel in and set the right heel down. Now the left leg is going to be straight in addition to the right leg being straight. If you're a little tighter in the hamstrings, definitely use your blocks. And for some people, I'll even have them just have their fingertips on the blocks. You might even have your hands on a chair if you're really tight. And one of the signs is that your knee will bend and it's hard to straighten it. And that's a good indication to have a chair underneath your hands or blocks under your hands. So now once you've found the right height, I would like for you to take your left thumb and first finger. Left thumb goes into the left hip crease and your fingertips kind of wrap around the left thigh to help to tack the hip back in space, because the side of the rib cage on the left side likes to hike up and tighten. Now you might notice that when you do that, your left big toe side of your foot lifts. So it's just a little bit of negotiation. Keep the left big toe down and tack the left hip back. Now that we've done that side, we'll switch to the other side. We'll step the right foot forward and the left foot back. Turn the left heel in at an angle about 10 to 15 degrees. Find the height that works for you. Maybe you're using a chair. Straighten both legs. Take your right thumb, place it in the hip crease of your right thigh to tack the hip back, but keep the big toe ball mound down. You can return your hand back to the block when you feel like you've established the firm foundation and the hip tacking back. Okay, let's step the left foot forward. Move the blocks off to the sides. Place the hands onto the floor. If you can't reach the hands to the floor here, or your mat rather, walk your feet back a little bit until you can get your palms flat. If you still can't, you can use blocks underneath your hands on the lower setting and walk your feet back to a downward dog. So either way, we'll be in downward dog. And in downward facing dog, with the palms rooting down into the blocks or the floor, I'd like for you to lift your heels about 2 to 3 inches. And when you do so, bend your knees about 10 to 15 degrees. So it's not a huge bend. It's just a bit. And that should help you to lift your tailbone to bring more curve to your low back. Now push with your hands to lift your hips just up a little bit more. A couple more breaths here. Let your neck and your head be relaxed. And then we'll lower the knees down, back to tabletop here. And we're going to make our way into a seated position. I'm going to recommend that you use a bolster or a couple of blankets to sit onto. We'll finish with a twist today. So as you are seated on the front edge of the bolster, much like at the beginning of class today, we'll start with the legs in extension, meaning that the knees are straight and the legs are active. So you can curl the toes in towards the shins. I'll be your mirror here. So bending the right knee and taking the right foot to the outside of the left thigh. See if you can keep your weight equal through both of the sit bones. And we're holding on to that right thigh with the left hand. Inhale to reach the right arm up alongside the ear and get a little longer and taller through your spine, just a little. And then as you exhale, gently twist to your right. Let your head follow. And take your right hand onto the bolster behind you or the floor, wherever you can reach. It's okay if you lean back a little bit. And enjoy the twist. So we're not trying to crank into our deepest twist. We're just finding that right balance between effort and ease. I sometimes call that the Goldilocks principle, where it's just right. And then on your exhale, let's come out of the twist here. Just take a moment to notice the effects of the posture. Good. We'll come back into that Saptandasana pose with the legs straight, active feet. To transition to the second side, so you'll bend your left knee, left foot to the floor, and then you can assist bringing that foot to the outside of the straight leg. Good. We'll hold on to the knee here with the right hand and reach the left arm forward and up. Use that opportunity to get a little bit taller, more spacious on the in-breath. And on your out-breath, you can start to rotate here to the left in your upper spine, your upper rib cage. And once you've found the degree with which you feel some ease and strength, you can lower that left hand down to the bolster or maybe the floor behind you. It's okay if you lean back a little bit. And just finding that kind of sweet spot, if you will, where you can still maintain your mindfulness, your awareness. And on an exhale, you'll come back to center. Pausing for a moment. Excellent. So we can straighten that left knee. And so we're going to make our way now onto our backs. So let's have a bolster at the foot end of the mat and a block close by. So we'll go into supported bridge and then you can do Shavasana. So in constructive rest pose, or more like a bridge prep here, the knees are bent, the feet are hip distance apart. There's no blanket under the head for this, by the way. And you're going to press through your feet to lift your sacrum and your spine as much as you can to slide the block underneath the back of the pelvis, the sacrum. You want to make sure it's not under your low back. So right there in the center of the sacrum. So you created a shelf for that center of your sacrum to rest down into. Try not to tuck your pelvis. Good. And And then you can let your arms rest out to your sides a little bit, 45 degrees. You might feel okay to turn your palms up here. Bring your chin a little bit away from your chest and see if you can start to lift your sternum, your breastbone, towards the sky a little bit rather than compressing down. If you compress the heart center down, you'll notice the shoulders, the heads of the shoulders lift towards the sky. So allow the sternum to lift a little bit, and the upper arm bones here start to become more heavy towards the ground. Focus in on your breath, moving in and out. And just knowing that we're close to Shavasana always allows me to feel a nice sigh of relief. It's like, you know, what I've been waiting for, the peak posture, the pinnacle pose. It's also one of the hardest poses for us to be still and quiet. So to come out, we'll lift the hips just enough to slide that block out from beneath the hips. And if you want to, you can grab your bolster and place it underneath your knees. You might use a little bit of foot magic to grab it and pull it in towards you. Support the knees. And if you feel like you need a blanket under your head, you can grab your blanket. That's totally fine. So get comfortable. Bring your arms out a comfortable distance so that the shoulders can settle to the earth, and close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, just settle into the rhythm of your breath. And you may endeavor here to let go of your effort. The effort of striving and trying, and even the effort of pulling back and not doing too much can be a challenge for us. So just recognize that now in this Shavasana, this final resting pose for today, that there's nothing that you need to do right now. There's nowhere you need to be. So giving your weight and your effort to gravity, to the earth. And allow yourself to feel supported by the ground beneath you. And just for now, allow yourself to let go. Any clenching, any gripping. Body relaxed. Body centered. Breath calm and easeful. As you relax deeply here. slowly and gently bring your awareness back to your body. You're more than welcome to lie here for the remainder of time, or if you have more time to stay in Shavasana, that's fine. If you are coming to seated, bring your hands together at your heart space and just give yourself some time to really feel into the gentleness of your heart, the gentleness of your spirit. And may this practice have a positive ripple effect out into the world so that we can remember to be compassionate, not only to ourselves, but to those around us. And really, to me, that's the real yoga. That's the real work. So thank you for practicing with me, and I hope to see you again. Namaste.